Hey there, I'm Ed Gannon and welcome to The Baby, where we talk about life as the youngest in the family. So our guest today is Maggie. Maggie, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Tell us about your family structure.
I grew up in a very Catholic family. There was 10 children. Mum and Dad are no longer with us, but there's 5 girls, 5 boys. It was pretty chaotic. It was good fun. Being the last, I sort of missed out on a lot of the things that the older ones did when they were little, so they have all the stories, which are different to mine.
And what's the gap, what's the age difference from you to the top?
The elder sister is 20 years older, and then in the middle brother is 10 years older, and then there's me, but there's a 6-year gap between myself and number 9.
So 6 years between you and the next one up from you.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was obviously an accident. I was quite the afterthought. So Mum probably thought that she was done and dusted, and yes, and I came along. So
what's the composition? Boys, girls, where are we at?
5 girls, 5 boys.
And how does that pan out? Is that...
it's girl, boy, 3 boys, 3 girls.
Yeah, righto. So there is some sort of pattern to that by the sound of it?
Yeah, there is a bit.
So tell me, just describe growing up, what it was like.
Well, I suppose you don't know any different. It was a good, happy childhood. There was no issues, like everyone has issues with, deaths and that sort of thing. But it was happy times, lots of weddings, lots of babies being born. Yeah, a lot of comings and goings, like, people in and out a lot, which was good. Mum was a bit sick after I was born. I think she was probably just exhausted. And we had being Catholic here in the parish. And it wasn't unusual for a lot of our friends to have very large families, lots of, 8, 9, 10 children. So with some very close friends, just to give Mum a break, I used to go and stay with another family, and by chance they also were a family of 10 children and 5 girls and 5 boys.
And where did you stand when you went to that family? Where did you sit in relation to them?
I was their baby.
Righto. So you went from your baby of your family of 10.
Yes.
So you went to stay to another family of 10, so you became a baby of 11 in that family.
Yeah, like on and off. I lived on and off just to give Mum a break, so it wasn't like I went through schooling and all that sort of thing. But then after I did go to school, I'd always want to go back. That we had a house on the peninsula not far from then, so I would always want to go back to there, even though there was no kids my age.
Yeah,
I just loved it.
Yeah. And so you grew up in Melbourne?
Yes, in Vermont.
Right. So the family was near there. So tell me. So when you say you go and visit them, would you stay for how long? Would you stay there for?
Weeks at a time.
Righto.
Yeah. I can remember sitting on a potty in their kitchen.
Yeah.
So I was pretty little, and my auntie, I just won't say no, auntie that, and I used to call him Daddy with his surname. Yeah, I remember a lot of that. They had a black dog called Rick that she used to feed meaty bikes by opening up this cupboard and throwing them on the floor, and the dog used to go along. And then a bit later on, I would just empty the whole thing on the floor and watch this dog like a vacuum cleaner, and she'd be like, no, she'll blow up. And then I was not one to stay still. Like, I wasn't a still stagnant child. I was very busy.
So how did that go from you moving away from your family? Were you the only one who went and lived somewhere else? It was because you were so much younger?
Yeah, and Mum wasn't well. I think she'd had some heart issues and stuff, and I think it was just safer. And because, like that gap, my next one older would have been at school, started school. And I think it would have been just to help out at the start for, a few days. I do know that my elder sister got married when I was 8 weeks old, and so I was with that family when they were at the reception. I went to the wedding, apparently, of my sister at 2 months old, but didn't go to the reception, which I still have a go at her. So why didn't you invite me? She said you would have drunk all the beer on us. And I know I went from then. So I would have been, from a while. So they're obviously family, friends before I came along.
Right. So I've got to tackle two different families here. Like I've got to tackle the things like your sleeping arrangements at house number one in your house.
Yeah.
How did that work? First of all, how many in a room? What that sort of stuff?
Well, the first one had gotten married. All the boys, except for one that was studying, that was 5 bedrooms. So Mum and Dad started off in West Footscray. The first 6, I think, were born in West Footscray. It got a bit squashy there. And then, built in Vermont. And as the family did get bigger, I think they just put on an extension. But I think I would have been in a cot, and then would have been that the next 2 up maybe we shared. The boys being all in that big back room would have been 4 of them and 1 out the back. But the others, as they left, so one of my brothers, Mick, went overseas when I was about 3, I think, came back when I was 5, and he came back from overseas, and I can remember being with Dad at the breakfast table, and he's walked past to go to the bathroom, shower, and come back out with a towel around him, and I said, Dad, that guy Mick, and he said, yeah, Mick, and I said, yeah, when's he going to his own mum and dad's house? And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, he's been staying in the boys' room for a while now, and he said, mate, that's your brother, and I went, oh, is he? He said, yeah, he's just been overseas. You don't remember him. I thought he was some freeloader just getting free food and a shower of a morning. I didn't know who he was.
Dinty's ego. So what was the difference between you and him? What was that age group?
That would be 19 years.
Really?
I didn't have a clue who he was, yeah.
And your oldest sister had married and gone away?
Yeah, I didn't know who she was either.
Yeah.
So Mum, she came around a lot.
Yeah.
I just remember she held up this wallpaper. Mum held up wallpaper and said to Murray, what do you think of this? And she said, it's probably the ugliest thing I've ever seen. And I said, don't you speak to my mum like that? And she said, well, she's my mum too. And I said, no, she's not. And she goes, well, who do you think I am? I said, oh, you're Doug's friend, who was my brother-in-law, and they used to just turn up for tea and stuff every now and then. I thought she was Doug's friend. I didn't know. No one told me that they were my siblings. They were just people that came in.
So those two didn't live at home?
No. They did. Mick did until he bought a house, but he wasn't there that long.
Was there any others that weren't at home by the time you sort of cottoned on and worked out where you stood in the order of things?
Anne went overseas, and she told me a story. So when I was in prep, so she wasn't there either. But she used to send these audio tapes back from living in London and tell us everything that she was doing, and the Chelsea Football Club, because all the guys that she shared a house with were all mad, and she was telling us all about footy and what was going on in London and what streets, and she lived in Fulham and all the rest of it. And apparently in the school holidays come back, what did everyone do? And apparently I stopped and said I went to London, and it described to a T all these things, just verbatim had said what Anne had said. And I think when Mum picked me up, they were saying, what a fantastic experience for Mag to go to London. And Mum's like, she didn't go to London, she went to Rye. She hasn't been to London. So I just copied, whatever they'd said. And I suppose I did. I lived in an adult world because there was no other kids until my nephews and nieces came along. So all the conversation, I think I got well socialised very early.
So the nephews and nieces. So how far old were you when they started to come along?
19 months.
Right.
Was when the first one, and then I think there was a gap of about 5 years between me and the second one, and then they just went boom, 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 came along. So I was like more or less the big sister of all these kids.
Yeah. So which group do you belong in? Do you belong in with the siblings, or do you belong in with the next generation?
When I was little, I was probably with the little kids, sitting at the little kids' table at Christmas.
You had one of them as well.
Yeah. Oh, you're not going to fit. And it wasn't even a Christmas table. It was the billiard table with a cover on it.
No, the little kids' table for us was a little table.
Yeah, we did. And we were separate. And then, I suppose, and then as I got older, I went back to the sibling side.
Yeah.
Probably not till I was 18 or 19.
So how did it work when you went to stay with the other family, things like sleeping arrangements and all that sort of stuff?
Bunked in with the younger 2 girls.
Right. Right. So at your house, how many in the bedroom did you say?
There was 5 bedrooms, but then as everyone left it good, wasn't all that squashy. Our holiday house at Rye was a 3-bedroom fibro. And sometimes we had Nan and Pa there as well. I don't know how we fit. I remember Liz, one of my sisters, she used to sleep on a lilo under the kitchen table, and I slept in my cot in the boys' room till I was about 7 because I could still fit in it. And, it stunk. I remember that smell of boys being in that cot forever.
The cot one's an interesting one. You get to the point where your knees start to come up.
Well, I was a pretty little kid, so I fitted in there quite happily, until then. There was the girls' room and there was just 3 beds in there. Would have upgraded into that then.
Yeah. What was it like growing up in relation with your siblings, playing with your siblings? You were a bit behind the others.
Yeah.
So were you playing with them, doing stuff when you were young? Can you remember that?
Yeah. So the next one up wasn't all that fond of me coming into the world. So yeah, I wasn't up to it. The next one up, Liz, was very gentle, very kind, and my other brother that we call Fred, completely nuts and loved it. Like he could see that I was still a little kid when there was other adults, so he did kid things with me and laughed at stuff. He told me some shocking things.
Yeah.
He told me, I don't know why and why it was in his head, he told me once you turn 16, you have an operation and your backside gets sewn up so you don't poo anymore. All right, so Dad's reading the tape. I said, no, that's not right. I said, ask my brother Tim, and he's going, nothing, I'm not having anything to do with this. And I asked my brother Bernie was there for some reason, and he's put his backside in my face, like, look at the scar, so have a look at the scar. I asked Dad at the kitchen table, and he's just like, I said, is this true? And he's like, didn't say anything, thought it was funny. Went all the way to the other end of the house to Mum, who was laying in bed reading the Women's Weekly, reiterated the story. She said, who told you that? And I said, Fred. And she's wound up the magazine. She stomped all the way down to the family room, whack him over the head, stop telling her things like that. I don't know why he said it, but there was things like that a lot. He also said, I said, have you got a girlfriend? And he said, yeah, but you're not allowed to tell anyone. Of course I was, as a little kid, and I said, what's her name? And he said, Raquel Welsh. So when he had pissed me off a bit at the dinner table doing something, and I've done that. And anyway, Fred's got a girlfriend, and everyone said, oh, what's her name? I said, Raquel Welsh, thinking it was a girl at school, and everyone's just lost their gear. And I'm thinking, what's so funny? Well, I thought I was getting him good by dobbing him in.
They sound like they work you out pretty early, didn't they?
Backfired on me big time.
And what sort of stuff did you do around that? Like actually games that you used to play. What sort of stuff would you have done? And how did that? And where did you fit into that, being the youngest?
No, I was included in that because I was very much into the games. We used to play a game called Stop, where we just had a rolled up pair of footy socks and throw them, and you weren't allowed to move, like a statue thing. And we'd play that for hours and hours and hours. A lot of kicking of the footy, cricket, tennis were all very, very sporty, like out the front, or we'd go around to the primary school to kick the football. We had the pool in the backyard, the 3-foot aluminium number. Because they were a bit older, I think I sort of did a lot of my own thing.
And the other family, when you went and stayed there, was it the same sort of world?
Absolutely. It's like identical family, same morals, having to go to church on a Sunday, rain, hail or shine, even if your leg was hanging off, there was no excuses. Like it was the same meals, the same banter, the same love, it was no different. And it still isn't where you can catch up now. It's still the same old sort of thing. Yeah. So I think that's why it was not a problem for me, and probably not a problem for Mum and Dad, thinking, well, our child is, with another family for a little bit, because I was safe and I was happy to be there.
Yeah. What about meal times?
I was there because the food wasn't of interest to me in any way, shape or form till I probably got to my teenage years. I had far better things to do than to be sitting down eating. I thought that was a waste of time. Unless I was starving, Mum said about every 3 days I would eat a proper meal, but I had to be there at the table with everyone else.
At both houses?
Both, yeah, to be included and to sit there and and be part of, you know, the chatter, because that's what happens, you know, that's where everything happens. We'd still be sitting there for ages after the meal had finished, just carrying on and banter and whatever.
Yeah. So there was a rule. You actually had to be there.
I had to be there, yeah.
Even if you weren't going to eat.
Yeah. It was served up to me, and Mum would see that either you know, I was going to eat it or I wasn't, but it just didn't matter to her as long as I was there and part of the family.
Yeah. What about sort of family gatherings at the time? Was there, I mean, obviously sounds like it's probably a Sunday thing where you did mass a lot. Was there a thing around that at the time, or, you know, like special Sunday lunch, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, we'd have I think we had Sunday lunch afterwards. I think also Thursday night, some of the older siblings and sisters-in-law played netball, so there'd be a few of the nephews, I remember, coming around, and that was good fun. We used to do somersaults on a divan in the family room on a Thursday night. I remember that for many a year.
So staying at the other family, how long did that continue on for?
Till just before I started primary school, and then Mum was able to cope, I think, then.
Right.
But then, as I said, I'd still, we were at Rye, they were at Macrae, I'd still go and stay 3 or 4 days because I'd want to be with them. During
holidays.
Yeah.
Going to school, how was that for you as the youngest?
It was just something that you did. You just went to school.
Was there the pomp and ceremony involving the oldest as there would be for the youngest, or do you think it's probably the same?
No, I don't. I don't think there was a lot of pomp and ceremony, because I don't know how many would have still been at. Maybe 6 of us still. Oh, no, it would have been more, because Jared and Bernard got married when I was in grade 1, I think. So they would have still been there. No, they would have said, go get them, Tiger, sort of thing, you know. But I don't think it would have been any pomp and ceremony. That was more for if you'd stuffed up majorly or got into trouble. That was more of that. They'd just go, ha, you got in trouble.
What about as you got older and things like the end of school? Was there a focus on you in relation to things like doing homework, worrying about how you're going for your progress?
From my parents?
Yeah.
I think I wasn't studious. Well, in hindsight, they didn't know that I had ADHD. So, no, it was just, I think they'd had enough of parenting by then. But, you know, it was up to me to do it. But it was fine. I got through. And they went away a lot. So they would go, they had racehorses, and they'd go to follow their horses around the Victoria race courses and stuff, and I would stay home from 15 or 16.
Was there anyone else around at that time?
No, I was the only one at home then.
So you had to organise yourself, get to school.
Yep, and did do it, surprisingly.
Yeah.
It surprises me now when I look back and I think, why did I get up? Well, I had to catch a train from Mitcham Station and went to school in Hawthorn. It wasn't exactly around the corner. So just because it was expected, that's what I had to do, so I just did it.
Yeah. And what about rules around about that time as you got to a teenager?
Lax, because I was honest with Mum, said I'm going to the Mitcham pub, I'm going to the Manhattan.
How old would you have been at that stage?
17, 17, year 11. So I was a December baby, so I was a bit younger than the rest, because I'd done it all before and I was honest, and she knew where I was, and she, you know. And the other thing that I would have been with the boys I went to primary school with, who she'd known since they were 5, and I was like a sister to them. I preferred male company. I couldn't be bothered with the girly bitchiness, and I wasn't boy crazy or anything like that. So I'd all right, stuck by these fellas, and we used to go surfing a lot, and Mum would just knew that I was in safe hands and would just let me go.
Would the oldest have been able to go to the pub when they were sort of 16? Would life have
probably not, but I don't think the older ones would have wanted to. Some of the girls wouldn't wanted to. Boys had footy club and that sort of thing. Yeah, I think I got away with a lot more because there's nothing that they hadn't seen by it came. So any of those, as it's dribbled down that they've done something crazy or whatever, they hadn't not seen it before. Wasn't going to be a surprise to them.
You'd have to do something pretty spectacular to break a record.
Yeah. And you wouldn't want to nudge that by any stretch of the imagination. They're quite strict.
How do you differ, or do you differ from your oldest sibling or oldest siblings?
I'm completely different. Completely different. The oldest is very just responsible. I mean, has got a good sense of humour and likes a gag, but nothing like, would never have done anything. She would just say, what a stupid thing to do, and why are you doing that? And in hindsight, it's because my brain is wired differently. That's completely why I would do things that she would think were crazy, or why I didn't study and all the rest of it. But I think that's with a lot of the older ones, that even put pressure on themselves to succeed and to do well. It's just how they were. And Mick, I think, is the same. He was very successful. And I think also genetically you've got half and half. So you're either that side that's very academic and focused and career-oriented, or there's the rest of us that sort of just have fun and get by.
You say you're wired a bit differently, and you did mention ADHD before. Does the difference between you and the oldest have, being the youngest, is that a factor in that, do you think?
Yeah, it probably does, yeah.
In what way? What do you think?
I don't know how to put it. Just what I was doing, which they, wouldn't agree with, and all the rest of it. This is also what I used to find annoying, if they were trying to tell me what to do and I didn't like it, because I thought, you are not my parents. Because they were older, and they were probably just trying to guide me or whatever, but I used to get quite sick of that, and I became quite, as my brother Mick had said at my 21st, the nonconformist. I never conformed to anything ever, which I think is I thought, these are my parents. They're the ones that ultimately I go by, what they say. They're the other ones. When you've got all these other older siblings putting their 10 cents in, I just shut off and just go, not listening to you. Who are you to tell me what to do?
Did you think you had a voice when you were young?
No.
Why was that? Explain that.
Because you were cut off quick. Because you're a kid. What do you know? Sit down, shut up. So,
were you asked your opinion on stuff?
No. Wasn't warranted.
What about decisions?
No. Decisions were made by mum and dad. There, no. I wasn't part of the jury there.
And has that shaped you now that you're older, that way that was?
I'm vocal now. Yeah, I think that somewhere in my teens I found my voice a bit more and thought, hang on here. They probably didn't mean to do it.
Yeah.
It's just how it was.
Yeah. The large family, things like gatherings, Christmas, those sorts of things. What was Christmas like for you?
Oh, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. But it wasn't, presents and Santa coming. And still now, you love seeing everyone, having everyone together. Like my youngest child is the 38th grandchild, and I think there's about 35 great-grandkids. So my kids, they say my cousins, which are their second cousins really. But watching all these generations of who mum and dad created running around at Christmas and just or whatever family thing you go to, just being there, you just think this is cool. This is us, I wouldn't I was just away with girlfriends on the weekend. They were saying there's at their Christmas table there's like 7 people, and I couldn't imagine that. I just couldn't imagine. I'd just say, oh wow, far too quiet.
What's the reaction from people when you say I am the youngest of 10?
Well, they blown away, because nowadays there's no one has 10 kids. No one has more than 4, I don't think. That's a big family. Blown away, but of course, because no different. Just go, yeah, well, that's my family. That's what it's like having curly hair or brown eyes. That's just how it is. But then they say, were you spoilt? And I just have to say, probably, yes.
Well, that was my next question. Were you spoilt?
Yes, because I think mum and dad were 19 and 20 when the first one was born, when they were married. And I don't think they had a lot at all. They really, really struggled. And his dad worked harder, and he was a panel beater, and he got his own business and then bought a business in Mitch and bought the block to build in Vermont. So I think, like the middle ones and stuff would have got a bit more at that same time. But then by the time, I came along there, we weren't wealthy, but we could afford, Dad could afford to do the stuff like buy a little shack at Rye or have his hobby race horses, but like we weren't millionaires.
Yeah, and being the youngest by 6 years would have a factor in that as well.
Yeah. So I think, I probably got a lot more than that, but I also think, well, they got a lot more time. They got a lot more time, the older ones, with mum and dad. So mum and dad never played with me. They loved me, but like they're not going to get on the floor, and which I make a point of doing with my kids. I'm quite silly with them, even though I had them older, and I'll climb a tree and I'll be stupid, and because I remember I missed out on that a bit.
What about things like sporting events? Did your parents go to sporting events for you?
Yeah, and all of our stuff, like for me, and drama plays and stuff. I can't imagine Jack, my dad, really, really being enthusiastic and doing that stuff, but he did it. The sport he liked, but other stuff, he'd just go along and he'd do his little clap and say, "Is it time to go now?" So I think that I got the fair bit of that. But the boys played. 3 boys were in the same team at Vermont, but Mum would go every week to watch them. But I don't think that those others have played netball, got the same glory there.
The same amount of attention.
No, because I probably thought it was boring.
Yeah. You talk about the holiday house. Was that there because too many of you go on holidays? Did you ever go on a holiday other than the holiday house?
Yeah, I think the story was that my granny used to, so she had 3 children, but she had 24 grandchildren. So she had 3.
Well, that's a pretty good ratio.
Yeah, Dad had 10, my auntie had 10, my uncle had 4, 24 grandkids. So she used to, Grandpa wasn't alive, but she'd worked quite late in her life. So I think she was not well off, but she could afford stuff. So she used to rent a house over the Christmas, and each of her children and their kids got 2 weeks each. So it'd be like Anglesea or, different places. I think they used to go to Point Lonsdale or Port Arling. This is before me. So they had that, but Dad also had a caravan, and I think they used to go to Merimbula or somewhere. I don't know how Mum would have coped with that. The amount of work with like 6 kids in a caravan. But they did it. I didn't do the caravanning because I think I was 2 weeks old when Dad bought rye. So I was always there. Thank God, it was great. It was only 300 metres to the front beach, an absolute shack, and we loved it.
So the rest of the family have you to thank for having Rye, because you were the one that tipped him over the edge. I've got another one. I better buy a holiday house.
I think that now that you've put that in my head, I'm going to reiterate that to them and see how we go. As I'd mentioned, like it being like a bit of a surprise, I was actually there's a Catholic newspaper thing called the Magellan. Do you know it?
I remember the Advocate.
It was like that. Well, this was a magazine called the Magellan, and you get all of those in the Catholic, the Far East, the whole lot. Have a Project Compassion box on top of the fridge that you don't get caught stealing from to get an ice, because that...
there's only one place you go into if you get pinch money out of the compassion box. Yeah.
Caught a few times. I did not learn my lesson with that at all.
I know where you're going at the end.
Straight away. So it doesn't matter what I do from now on. It's just, at the age of 6, it was just there, like that's straight down.
Biggie bag.
But see, in the Magellan, so the story was when Mum found out she was pregnant with me, the doctor said you really should terminate the pregnancy because you're writing your own death sentence carrying this through, which is a lovely thing to tell your child. So I found out, so I was supposed to be aborted. And she said, no, I'll take the risk. And then when I was born at St Vinny's Private, and I was fine, Mum was fine, and this doctor came past and looked in the bassinet and Mum said he put his head over his coat as if to say, oh, lucky you didn't, sort of thing. But she couldn't, being Catholic. She said, no, I'm going to take the risk. So she'd had heart problems or something, but there was nothing wrong with me. So they used to often say, in the parish and stuff, the other family, I'll say it too, and they'll have a giggle. I was the miracle baby. And I used to say to one of my brothers mucking around, I said, don't pick him, I'm the miracle baby. And he'd say, miracle, you survived. I'll still give it him that. Don't touch the miracle baby.
How do you think your siblings look at you now? Do they still treat you like the baby?
Yeah.
In what way?
Well, they can't help it because I'm the youngest and because I'm as immature as buggery. So they've got no choice.
And you'll be the baby until the very end?
Yes. And I quite like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do look out for me still, always. They always will, I think.
Yeah.
But then again, I look out for a lot of the nephews and nieces as well.
Yeah. Were you ever, because of the 6-year difference, were you ever lonely? Did the others gone away at one stage, and you and I think back, you know, when you said about your parents used to travel around a bit and you'd be home sort of on your own. Were you ever lonely?
I quite liked my own company, so no, that didn't really worry me. I could have mates over, or I could have my own, and I'm the same now. I can take it or leave. I can do both. The only thing that I didn't like, it was probably those ages of 14, 15, when there was still some there, and they were getting ready to go out on a Saturday night. You know, it's hey, it's Saturday would finish, and then they'd go and get ready for their Saturday night out, and so we're all there watching Hey, which is Australia, you know, an institution. It's what everyone did. And that's when I used to think, you know, and then I'd be in bed at 9:30 and I thought, well, this sucks. Because there's no other sibling. They were all gone. They were out. Mum and Dad are watching some movie and I can remember being really bored then. And I think Mum caught on, so I would go to mates' places or have someone come and stay for the company. Because I think they realised, well, yeah, she's got no one.
Mm.
So, and still my best mate, Kate, that I'm, you know, met at 12 at high school, that's what we spent until we were old enough to go out. We were just at each other's places every Saturday anyway, Saturday night. So
you sort of see the logic of the youngest bending the rules a bit at the end because, you know, everyone else is going out and doing stuff out and you're sort of left there on your own.
Yeah.
And that's probably, you know, quite a common thing.
Did you have the same thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, growing up on a farm, you've got to get off the farm. You got to get out of there.
Oh, I would have been the opposite if I had been on a farm. We could have swapped roles. Like you could have gone to Vermont, I could go on bush, and I would have been happy. Yeah. I really, really love like country or seaside. I'm not a city person. I would have been as happy as Larry on a farm.
It's really interesting for me to talk to people who actually were the youngest of really big families in the city, because I've always was associated big families to do with farms because, you know, a lot of the cases you know big families because it's cheap labour.
Yeah,
you work on the farm.
That's true. You're part of the family. Go do it.
Yeah, yeah. So that's sort of the way. So to talk to people who actually been in grow up in the city is really fascinating to me because it's such a different lifestyle.
Well, it would too.
Yeah. Going back to the holiday thing, and you're talking about Marimbula and the going away. Can you ever remember going away in a car on your own? And how would that work?
Oh, with Mum and Dad?
Yeah.
Yeah, it drove me crazy.
Mm.
At the same sort of thing, like at 13, 14, having to go that I had no interest in. It was
there a group? Was there a heap of you in the car? Or
no, just me and Mum and Dad.
Oh, that's the other thing too. I mean,
it's hell.
Did you spend much time on your own with your parents?
Yes, and then down at Ryde, they used to go. We'd go down on the weekends, even in winter time. I'd have my dog, my little dog Panda, and my bike, the BMX, and they wouldn't see me. They wouldn't even know where I was. I was in the streets of Ryde. It wasn't built up like it is now. It was just a lot of paddocks, just a lot of land. And I just go and do my own thing. But, yeah, because it was boring. It was boring. And so I said as I got older, I think Mum clicked on that this can't be fun. Because, all those others, they had each other. They had, someone who was 1 or 2 years age difference to hang out with. And
they were off the scene by that stage.
Yeah, so they could go and do whatever they wanted.
Yeah, so it's not that common unless, of course, if you are a big age group, to have a youngest who spends a lot of time on their own with their parents. Mm. But you did, because of that age difference.
So I was like, it's gone from having a whole lot of chaos and comings and goings and everything like that to then it just stopping. Like, because two brothers got married within a few months. Then, when I was little, but then Tim, when Tim got married and then Fred moved out and Liz went over the west and Lou got married and then there's me and you just sort of go, oh, yeah, it was pretty boring.
And you were still in the 5-bedroom house at that stage?
Till I was They didn't sell that till I was 20. So, yeah, I was there for 20 years in the 5-bedder.
Yeah, so you were still there when they sold the house and then...
Yeah, wanted to downsize. So Dad got a 5-bedroom place on 16.5 acres in Yering in the Yarra Valley with a pool and his racehorses. So didn't downsize at all. He upsized. It was actually belonged to a friend that they needed someone to take care of the property. So he said instead of going and buying another house, we could stay there for free to look after it. And I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Had a motorbike that you could fang around, all the fun farm things. So I was nursing, so I'd go to work and all I wanted to do was come home and play on a motorbike as a 20-year-old.
So what other stories do you have hidden about you being the youngest?
Mum was pretty free and easy, and so was the other mum that I went with. I can remember a lady talking to, she said, "You look like a frogman being at the local supermarket, Nancarrows, I think it was called." And I had head to toe scuba gear, like I had the flippers, the mask, and just going up behind Mum like she didn't care. A lot of people say we got to get dressed before we go out. I had a lot of hats and beads happening. I was very much into costume, and which I think was good, the creativity. Mum probably couldn't be bothered making me get dressed for one thing. But I liked that sort of freedom that she did. And the freedom of Dad coming home from driving up the driveway and going into Mum and said, "Do you know that Mag's sitting behind the chimney?" And she said, No, I didn't. And I climbed up on the roof sitting behind the chimney eating a pack of jelly crystals that I'd stolen from the pantry. So it was quite adventurous, but it didn't really worry her that I was like 3 and on the roof. Sitting happily behind. I think her thing was she said, "Don't get up there because you'll dislodge the tiles." And I think that's, if she had have said because it's dangerous you might fall, it wouldn't have got through to me. But thinking I was damaging her house, I might have thought, I better not do that. So it's pretty cluey. I do also remember being with Anne in a car accident. She ran into the front of the Vermont Post Office in the Mazda. And I was screaming, and because she just bought me a violet crumble, and she thought that I'd been really badly injured, and she was panicking, and she was screaming, and I'm screaming. But she said, all I was screaming was, "I've lost my crumble. I want another one."
How old were you then?
2. Because you didn't have car seats.
Seatbelts. You wouldn't have, no car seats.
No, I laid on the back parcel shelf because it's nice and sunny, and if you break, all you do is hit 5 heads that were in front of you. Just smack into them. It was lovely. It was nice and warm all the time. In the Chev, we had a Chevy Impala because there was no buses then, like, the Taragos. So you could have few in the front, bench seats.
So the Chevy Impala, you could just about sit someone beside the driver, between the driver and the...
2, I think.
Beside the driver and the door, just about.
Yeah. Yeah, it was big.
Being the youngest, how did it define you, do you think?
Well, I think everyone's got their place in the family. So I know that I'm the last. The oldest knows she's the first. We're not a demonstrative family, but we love each other and we're there for each other, sort of thing. So you're part of something big. You're part of something good, I would say. And defining you, it's just also, you've got the ability to go out and do what you want. You've done a good job. You are doing a good job. You're supported. You'll be pulled back pretty quick if you do anything bad. Yeah, which means being the youngest, they would probably still have a go if I did something silly, but I think they're probably given up by now.
I think that's about it.
Beautiful.
I reckon that's a good note to finish on.
Okay, then.
Good. Thanks, Maggie. I really appreciate it.
No problems, Ed. Loved it.
And thanks for listening to us. You can find more of The Baby wherever you found this episode, and you can also find us on Instagram, Facebook and Threads. Get in touch and tell us what you think, or if you're the youngest and you'd like to have a chat, then give us a yell. We'll catch you next time.
The Baby podcast acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land on which it was recorded and pays respects to elders past, present and emerging, as well as all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Music for this podcast is by Serge Pavkin Music. The Baby podcast takes no responsibility for any legal or personal disputes that may arise from this podcast. The Baby Podcast is written and presented by Ed Gannon. This has been a Media Means production.